Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're in studio to talk about a couple of things that relate to the ATF, and this is our latest edition of Shop Talk. If you guys have seen our previous Shop Talks, you go back a couple of years, it's been a while since we've done one. Now that there's a studio at Copper, we're going to do more Shop Talks going forward. Today we want to talk about a couple of things, but the most pressing issue is something we just learned of this morning, and that is the mass denial of Form 1's. Now recently the ATF has made it possible for people to submit Form 1's through the e-file system. And this would allow you not only to make SBRs, but also silencers. And the news that we have today is that it appears the ATF is doing mass denials of Form 1's for suppressors, which means if you want to build your own suppressor, you would submit a Form 4, then you would take various components and manufacture that suppressor and have your $200 tax paid. Everything's good in the eyes of the government. However, that appears to be a problem. So I just noticed this break in the news today. I know about an hour ago the Firearms blog did an article on it. And Dave, what do you know so far about this whole Form 1 mass denial? Why is the ATF taking the tack that this is illegal? Because of what reasons are they citing? Over the years, you guys have seen me use a lot of primary arms optics, everything from red dot sights to magnified optics. And why do I do that? Well, over the years, they've offered very good products for a very fair price. They have fast shipping, outstanding customer support, and that's why you've seen me using those products for so many years. If you guys would like to pick up a magnified optic like you see on this Daniel Defense Mark 12, you can pick up an optic like this one. Just put it in your cart over at pa.com or primaryarms.com. And if you use the code MAC at checkout, MAC at checkout, you'll get a free scope mount with your optic, and that goes for any Primary Arms branded optic. If you pick up an optic that has an integrated mount, use that code MAC at checkout, and you'll get a free Kill Flash ARD for that optic. So please swing by and check out primaryarms.com.
So the Form 1 denials look like they're mostly citing the possession of quote-unquote silencer parts or parts for the intent of manufacturing a silencer. They're pretty vague in what they're describing here. In the denial forms, and people have started posting some of that verbiage, but it's so overarching that really it could include any part, any washer, any oil filter, anything that you'd be in your possession, any pillow,
bicycle pump,
yeah,
tube.
I mean, they're really anything. So, it's hard to see where they draw a standard. And my question would be, how do they know that anybody's in possession of anything when they apply?
Right.
Right. So you submit a Form 4, you submit a series of a configuration for a Form 1 suppressor would be a configuration. So a length, a caliber, all that kind of stuff. But you don't necessarily have to be in possession of any of it at that point.
Right.
So technically they could approve it, and then you could go get the components. So they're saying possession of, even with an approved stamp, if you go and get components, is it the hardware store that's in possession of illegal parts?
All right.
Or as you're bringing it home, but if you already have a approved Form 1, it seems like they're jumping to a lot of assumptions and conclusions about what you're doing, when that's not necessarily maybe the case.
What it looks like is they're just saying you can't manufacture your own suppressor.
Right.
Right. So you can still Form 4 one. You can go to a dealer and buy one that's already complete. But it looks as if they're just saying all Form 1's for suppressors are going to be denied. I don't care what the reason is. And as you mentioned, people are posting that canned response. So when you get an e-file response for your denial, there's a little form at the bottom that gives the ATF's reason for that denial. And everybody's getting the exact same cookie cutter response.
I can read it word for word. It might be
it's a little bit lengthy and kind of legalese, but go ahead.
One that's retyped a little bit easier here. A silencer is defined under federal law to include in relevant part any combination of parts designed or redesigned and intended for use in assembling or fabricating a firearm silencer or firearm muffler, and any part intended only for use in such assembly or fabrication. See Gun Control Act, blah, blah, blah. Parts that fall under the definition of silencer must comply with the registration, tax, and transfer provisions of the NFA. Upon review of your E-Form 1 application, the part from which you intend to make a silencer already meets the NFA's definition of silencer. The part was not registered nor transferred in compliance with the NFA. Therefore, your E-Form 1 application to make a silencer is disapproved. NFA Division notes that it is unlawful for you to possess a silencer made or transferred in violation of the NFA. Now, when I read that, the question is, how do they know at which point you received the parts? Is it just because it's like a pre-made kit,
like a solvent
that they're aware
trap?
of?
Right. Which appears what they're doing, right? It would appear that, because what they've said there is you've acquired parts that are considered to be suppressor components. ATF has said in the past that you cannot have additional suppressor components. So say you go out and buy a silencer, you get a Surefire can, all right, or you pick up a Griffin armament that is user serviceable, and your blast baffle has become eroded. That's the first baffle in the stack that takes most of the blast as that bullet leaves the barrel. Those erode. You're not legally able to go out and purchase an additional baffle and swap that out yourself per ATF regulations, at least their interpretation of their regulations, because having that extra baffle is illegal in their eyes because it's a suppressor component. Now, it doesn't make sense. I don't believe it follows the statute as intended, but that's ATF's holding and has been for a little while now. It goes to wipes and anything else. It doesn't make sense in a whole lot of different scenarios. So let's take that Griffin armament can, for example. Again, let's talk about the Revolution 9. It can be in a K configuration or in a full-size configuration. You can take baffles out and shorten the overall length, thereby leaving you with 2 or 3 extra baffles in a drawer somewhere, so you can reassemble it into its full length. But once you assemble it into its short length, are you now in possession of illegal components because they're not in the silencer? You have extra baffles now? So their interpretation doesn't seem to make sense, and it seems like they're now applying this to the Form 1 standard. So if you plan to build a suppressor out of parts you can pick up at a hardware store, they're saying that the tube that you might buy is an illegal suppressor component, even though it's just a piece of pipe. Let's say that you plan on using a washer as a baffle. You're not machining anything. You just want to use washers. You're going to make a very crude suppressor, right? You're just going to put a series of springs and washers in there into a tube and seal it off on both ends and drill a hole through it. That's how you plan to make your silencer. But are they saying that each of those components now that are available at the hardware store, like you were saying, does that mean the hardware store's in possession of illegal suppressor components? Because people might intend to do that? Is the hardware store in possession of illegal bomb components because they have pieces of pipe and end caps? It seems like this is a really dangerous position for the ATF to take. And again, it seems to be something that is going across the spectrum. They're making wild assumptions that people already have these parts in their possession. Therefore, they're in possession of illegal components, and also has a bit of a threat, implied threat in that statement, in that you're breaking the law right now.
But that's assuming, again, they're assuming that they have the parts in their possession at all.
Right. But they're also assuming you're breaking the law.
Right.
That's why they're denying your Form 1, is because their assumption is you're in possession of illegal components. So with this denial, can you expect a knock on the door from the ATF? I mean, this is pretty ugly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, they're just making assumptions instead of taking the information on the Form 1 and processing it as is. They're making an assumption and denying it on that assumption, which is, I mean, really ridiculous. Really ridiculous, because I mean, they can translate that all sorts of different ways for different forms.
Right.
And this has to be fairly new, because, you know, we do engraving and stuff here for NFA items with completed forms, and you know, we will, you know, we're contracted to do some of those engravings for people who are bringing their Form 1s, and we'll engrave the bodies or whatever that is. And we've had some recently that have been approved. So this has to be a new turn.
Now, have you seen anything come in since the implementation of the e-forms, the electronic forms?
It had to be right about then. So e-forms went in 8 to 10 weeks ago is kind of when that initiated, and I had to be right about that time where the last one came in.
Because have we seen any have we seen Form 1's come back from e-file, and have we seen any Form 4's come back from e-file, which is the newest functionality?
Well, Form 1's have been on e-file capable for a long time. So Form 1's, and we don't see a lot of those. We see the engravings come in, but Form 1's are submitted by the end user. So we don't see a whole lot of those or what the approval times look like unless they bring it in for, gunsmithing or engraving work or whatever it may be. Form 4's, they opened up e-file. They've stated a 90-day approval time or an estimated 90-day approval time. We have yet, at Copper, we've yet to see any approvals. And I tried to search or do a quick search before this. I don't see any evidence of anyone getting e-Form 4's back yet. I could be wrong. There could be some out there. But we're right about that 90-day time of when that system's been up, and it might be possible for the forms to come back. So the next 30 days will be very indicative of how that system is really going to operate. It's been a tough transition for a lot of customers, especially that are used to, we process the overwhelming majority of our forms over the last several years with Silencer Shop, with the kiosk system. So we've seen a rough transition in that system and how that's processed. And so
well, just real quick, let's tell the people watching what the kiosk is. So It used to be we had to do everything via paperwork, right? You had to take paperwork, you had to print paperwork out, do fingerprints, print that out. And we used to have Clio sign off, but that changed. You just have notification now. But then you'd have to take all that information, put it in a packet, and mail it somewhere.
Let's back up, because fingerprints you'd have to go to a law enforcement agency and get ink fingerprinted on paper. And then you'd have to go to a CVS or a Walgreens, someplace that did passport style photos.
Yep.
You'd have to buy those. You'd have to fill out the forms, either computerized or by hand, tape the pictures on, include it, put it in a big envelope, and mail it with a check. That was,
and then wait. Right.
When we first came in business, that was the old system. And
so the kiosk came about, which is just a simple computer terminal that I think over 7,000 are in circulation now, right? It's just a simple computer terminal which expedites that process, in that you can scan fingerprints on site, you can take photographs on site, and then can you digitally submit those records?
So how it works is that the dealer will then tag that serial number to your Silencer Shop account. Then Silencer Shop will produce the paper Form 4s, and then the Form 4s were then submitted. On the early days, Silencer Shop used to show the boxes of USPS boxes full of forms that were getting mailed out. Now, over time, I'm not sure if they worked out another digital communication with the NFA branch or not. But traditionally, that's the way that Silencer Shop Form 4s worked.
So when that kiosk came out, it was pretty cutting edge, because up until then, the ATF hadn't approved such a system before. So Silencer Shop was working in conjunction with ATF to set the system up to kind of streamline the system somewhat, because the ATF recognized that the approval process and the submission process was taking too long.
And from a customer standpoint, it was a huge increase in convenience, because you go in and shop. We stock a ton of suppressors on the shelf. You go in and you shop and you make a decision that you want to purchase and get in the suppressor game. And before, the paperwork, you'd have to come back 2 or 3 times, go get fingerprinted, get sign off, all that kind of stuff. And the kiosk made it where you could do that. We set you up a Silencer Shop account, and it all gets processed there, 30 minutes to make everything and get it done. At that point, you leave. The only thing you have to watch is your email, and you do a digital signature on your email, and you're done. You wait your time, your stamp comes in, and very convenient. And it led to a huge boom in suppressor sales. Part of that's just due to suppressors being more normalized and society. People are getting more used to them, more knowledgeable about them. But Silencer Shop had a big hand in simplifying the application process, and it's been great over the last few years. That's changed slightly with the e-file system, and I completely respect Silencer Shop for being on the cutting edge. But now you have the Silencer Shop system that was developed to do these paper forms, and you have now this activation of the Form 4 e-file system. So now when customers come in, they actually have to have set up an account with both. When they purchase something, we still tag it to their Silencer Shop account. Then Silencer Shop has to prepare the forms, which can oftentimes take a couple days. And then the customer has to come back in store and do a joint certification session, which means the dealer has to log into their accounts, the consumer has to log into their accounts, and do a joint certification session. Seems easy enough, but both Silencer Shop's system and the e-file system are not the most reliable websites in the world. So we've had oftentimes guys have come in to do the recertification and then had to come back again because one of the sites were down, or they didn't have the right, it wasn't the right time or whatever it may be. Now, if you do a trust, you can certify over the phone, which is a little bit more convenient. But the majority of our forms nowadays are individuals for suppressors.
Yeah.
So
that's because under the Obama era, they made trusts.
Trust used to be a lot easier.
Yeah,
right.
Trust used to be super simple, super quick. Obama changed the rules around that, and they became more cumbersome and more problematic to do than just an individual transfer.
Mm-hmm. And so, we were, and it's still a lot of confusion on the dealer side. We've kind of figured it out. It took us a little bit. We figured out the process, but it's still not the most convenient. So the Silencer Shop system, albeit it's probably like for smaller dealers that aren't doing a huge volume of suppressors, it's probably a good functional system that they can survive with no issues. If you're a larger dealer, like for us, we've actually brought in our own in-house system, approved in-house system to do fingerprints and photos and all that kind of stuff to upload directly to the e-file system. And that minimizes the amount of work for everybody. It makes it more trackable. It reduces the time and cost to the customer. It eliminates the need for a repeat visits. So all that, including the form submissions and signatures, can all be done at one time. So the Silencer Shop kiosk system, albeit still is a functional system, with the application of the e-file, it's just not as convenient. It's kind of
it's adding an extra layer to the process, perhaps.
Yes, okay. And a complicated and unreliable layer.
And that's because the communications between the two different systems is complicated and unreliable.
Right, the process. And I hope that over time they can improve it. We're only a couple months into this, but I think there is some room for improvement. I think if you're a dealer that's processing a lot of silencers, research your own systems, get it in house and process it. We've been doing that for a few weeks now, and it's been far better.
So you're
far better.
Scanning your own fingerprints, doing your own photographs, and submitting everything online through the e-file system, assisting the customer in doing that versus going through the kiosk system.
The other cool thing that it allows you to do, and you'd still have to print out paper fingerprints, but you can do, like with our electronic system, there's a separate fingerprint card printer. Mm-hmm. So you do them digitally and then it prints out the cards, but it allows customers to also use your system to submit Form 1's, which is really nice. Instead of them going to get ink fingerprinted and get the photos like the old school way, Silencer Shop doesn't support Form 1 submissions. So if you bring in your own system, you can actually use that system to allow customers to use it to submit their own Form 1's, which is kind of neat. So it gives you a little bit more, service. We've only been doing the Form 1 thing for a few days, and we've already had 2 or 3 guys come in and do it. We haven't even advertised it, just word of mouth of people in the shop. So for a bigger dealer that would be, similar to us, I think there'd be a lot of benefit, and we've seen a lot of benefit to bringing in your own system. And you don't have to get rid of Silencer Shop. A lot of guys still buy on Silencer Shop and transfer it through, and that's a seamless transfer, except they still have to go through that certification process. So it's not one or the other. It can be both, which is kind of cool.
And Silencer Shop may update their system to make it a little bit.
I hope so.
Right, yeah.
I hope so.
Because digitally filing is the future. I've always thought it was a bit archaic that we were in the 2020s and the ATF is still stuck on paperwork. They're literally mailing paperwork between offices, and, it's time consuming. Paperwork gets lost. It's just ridiculous, the fact that they're doing that, because keep in mind that paperwork is going from ATF's hands to FBI's hands to ATF's hands. So there's a lot of shuffling, and then it just sits in the stack, and you have a handful of agents going through reviewing and approving those forms. It just seems that it would be nice if they could expedite that process. It'd be nice if we just get rid of the process.
Yeah.
It seems stupid.
Yeah.
But if we have to play under these draconian rules, at least make it less painful, because if you ask me, them delaying the purchase of a firearm or a suppressor is a gross violation of the Second Amendment, right? So the fact that people have to wait a year to get a Form 1 back or more, or a Form 4 back, that's just asinine to me.
Right.
And so I think the ATF might be afraid of legal challenges. It seems like something has spurred them into finally starting to take the step to digitizing some of this stuff to make it quicker. And it seems to be that something ATF is promoting. Well, this will be a faster system. So I don't know if it's pressure from congressmen, because I spoke to several congressmen that are applying pressure to ATF, or if it's just people in general applying pressure.
Part of my worry, and this is purely theory on my part, part of my worry is their attempt to streamline, which they've never shown a large willingness to streamline the NFA process. I mean, Form 1's great, but that's still a low volume compared to Form 4 processing. My worry is that this attempt now to streamline is a precursor to calming down any backlash on future restrictions, whether it's braces, whether it's anything else. Is that, hey, we're going to come down on braces, but you can Form 4 or Form 1 an SBR quickly and easily now. No longer have a wait. Like I said, I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's their thinking, but that's my worry, is that, all of a sudden they feel like they need to streamline that process when, there are questions in the gun industry of future restrictions that could happen later in the year, at the very least before this administration's out.
Interesting. Well, guys, if you've gotten a denial letter on your Form 1, comment down below. We want to read those comments, because it'd be interesting to us to find out exactly how many denial letters are going out and how many of these Form 1s are being denied. It certainly seems right now, as to what's being reported in the media, that this is a mass denial of all Form 1s under the assumption, again, that you're in possession of illegal components. So comment down below. Also, guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, a great way to do that is become part of our Patreon family. There is a link in the video description below. Follow that link and join up with our Patreon family. Also, right here on YouTube, got that little join button. You're watching underneath the player right now. Mash that join button. You can support us here on YouTube. And last but not least, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 14 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.